This is the Cabletime USB 3 HDMI video capture card, and it supports full HD 1080p at 60 Hz, so 60 frames per second, and it has a USB-A and USB-C support as well. But the interesting thing about this one is that it supports 100 watts power delivery. So let me unbox it quickly. So you get the unit in the box and also a warranty card, and that's it. So this is the device, and here on the side you see the USB-C port, which is for powering your phone or whatever device is connected on this other end. And here there is the USB-A, and if you pull out the USB-A, there's a USB-C, so you can connect it directly to a phone and have this side connected via HDMI. So on the back of the box, it actually says the spec of this unit. So it has a full-size HDMI port, and you can output with either USB-A or USB-C. And the maximum input resolution is 4K at 30 frames per second, so 4K 30 Hz. And the maximum output resolution is 1080p at 60 frames per second, which says 1080p 60 Hz. And the power delivery charging it supports is USB-C power delivery up to 100 watts. And the material is aluminum shell plus PVC jacket. So the aluminum shell should be good in terms of dissipating the heat. So let's see how this works. So I'm gonna test this, but before I test this, I just wanted to show you some other capture cards that I have. So for example, this is an unbranded capture card, and you can see it's a tiny bit smaller, but the main problem with this one is that you can't charge your phone at the same time. So if I have this plugged into my phone and I'm doing live streaming, once my phone's battery runs out, then the live streaming has to stop. So this is the main problem that this capture card tackles. It has a USB-C for powering the device, so you put in the USB-C from a power bank or a USB adapter, and then this side will actually charge the phone or whatever laptop or device you have on the other side, and at the same time it will also transmit the video. So in order to overcome this problem, I had tried to buy a mini USB hub which has a USB-C that goes into the phone, and on this side it has a power delivery USB-C, and on this side it has a full-size USB-A, which I would combine with a video capture card. But the problem I found with this is once I plugged in this large capture card, I couldn't actually plug this USB hub into the phone. So this solution didn't work. So what I did instead is I bought a different USB hub which has a cable connected to it, and it has two USB-A ports on this side and one USB-A port on this side, and it also has a USB-C port on this side. So that way what I could do is plug in the capture card into the USB-A version 3 port, and I would use one of the other ports for powering the device. But obviously, as you can see, this is quite big, and it would essentially be hanging off the camera or your phone, so it wasn't really a convenient way of doing things. So with the Cabletime video capture card, it actually replaces that, but it's all in one unit, so I don't need to carry anything extra. It's just the HDMI from a camera coming in here, and the USB-C for powering, which I would have. So there's no additional devices. I mean, this might be a little bit larger than this one here, but if you compare it to, let's just say, this capture card plus a USB hub, then you can see it's a smaller and neater solution. Okay, so what I have here is a mirrorless camera, and I've connected the HDMI port of it to the Cabletime video capture card, and the capture card is connected to my phone. And also there's a USB-C power cable going into the Cabletime capture card. So I don't know if you can see this in the image, but the battery is being charged on the phone. And what I'm going to do is open the app. Okay, so I've opened up the app here, which is reading the content of the HDMI capture card. And as you can see, the battery is also being charged at the same time. So the other thing that you can also pay attention to is that the audio meters are going up and down. So the audio is also being transferred into the phone from the camera as a source. So here with this app, I have the option to record or live stream or do whatever I want. And also I'm not worried about the battery on the phone running out. So this is the main advantage of using this capture card as opposed to other capture cards. This is the Cabletime 3-in-1 HDMI video switcher, and it supports 4K 60 Hz, so 4K at 60 frames per second, and it also comes with a remote control, and it's made out of aluminium. So I'm just going to go through the spec quickly here on the back of the box. So it has 3 HDMI input ports, and those are full-size HDMI ports. And it has 1 full-size HDMI output port, and the resolution it supports is 4K 60 Hz, or 4K at 60 frames per second. And the power requirements for it is 5 volts at 1 amp. So it takes USB-C power, but it only requires 5 volts at 1 amp, which means you can also supply this voltage and current using an old power bank or old USB adapter. It doesn't need to support USB-C power delivery or any high power adapter or power bank. And it's made out of aluminum shell plus ABS and acrylic. So I'm just going to unbox it quickly. There's an instruction manual. It tells you what the ports are and what the package contents are. So I'll come back to this in a second. And this is a remote control, so you can switch between the different HDMI inputs. And this is a warranty card. And this is the device itself. So you can see the device is actually tiny. And it has 2 feet here, so that it sits stable on a table. And here you have the infrared for the remote control. And there's a button here on top as well for switching. And there's also a USB cable here. So it's USB-A to USB-C. So I assume this is for powering the device. So here on the side, there's the USB-C port, which only requires 5 volts at 1 amp. So any old USB adapter would be fine as well. And here you have the HDMI output. It says input here, but this is the one you use for output. And these ones that are marked as output are actually the input. So this is all that there is to it. So I'm going to test it with different input ports and see how the output actually switches and how it works. But before I do that, let me just go through the manual quickly. So the aim of this switcher is actually for using it with monitors. So let's just say you have 3 different devices, I don't know, like a PlayStation and your computer and maybe, I don't know, a DVD player or any other type of streaming device. And then you connect these and then you can change between what's actually outputted on your screen. So that's what it's made for. But in my case, what I want to do is use it as a form of connecting 3 different cameras to it and then changing the output. So what this would let me do is, in a really small package, without any additional luxuries such as screen in screen, I would have 3 cameras either coming in directly or through a wireless means connecting to this, and then with the press of a button or using this remote I can change which one is outputted on this side. And the output, what we'll do with the output is feed it into the video capture card and then transmit it as a live stream. So this is probably the smallest video switcher that you can get, and combining it with the capture card would let me stream quite efficiently with a really small and light package and minimal power requirements. So it doesn't have any luxury features, but that's the advantage of it, because it means it's really small and really light and portable. And that's what I've been looking for. So according to the manual, the remote comes with a battery, and you can switch between the sources using either the remote control or the switch button on the product. So if you don't really want to use the remote, you don't want to carry something additional with you, then you can literally just use the button here to switch between it. You might be limited to switching in sequential order, whereas with the remote you can switch directly to whichever input you want. So that might be an advantage of using the remote as opposed to the button on here, which would make you switch sequentially through each port before you reach the one that you actually want. So a few other things worth mentioning is that it supports 4K at 60 frames per second, but then you have to make sure that the cables that you're using with it also support 4K at 60 frames per second. And once there's an active connection to it, then a blue LED will turn on. So I'm just gonna run this and show it to you. Okay, so here I have a mirrorless camera, and its HDMI output is going into the Cabletime video switcher, and the HDMI output port is going from the video switcher into the Cabletime video capture card, and there's a USB-C powering option here connected to it. So that's powering the phone. If you can see the icon there, you can see that the phone is also being powered and charged at the same time. And here we have the video capture app, which is capturing the video which is coming from the actual camera. And this is the button I can use to switch between video sources. So right now I only have one source connected, so I'm going to connect another source and then I'm going to start switching between them. Okay, so now I have two cameras connected here, and I'm going to press the switch button to see whether the image here changes or not. So that went to the third port, which I don't have anything connected to. So I'm going to press it again so that it goes to the second one. Okay, so now you can see the input from the second camera. So the nice thing is that I can switch between these. But one disadvantage that you need to know if you're using the button on this device itself as opposed to the remote control is that you can only go through these sequentially. So if you want to go from the third camera input to the second one, you have to go through port 1. You can obviously do the pressing quickly, but you just have to be aware that you need to do it that way. Alternatively, if you don't want that, you can use the remote control and just press the HDMI port that you want to go to. But that means carrying this extra thing and also making sure that you have the battery in there which is charged and available for use. Personally, I prefer to reduce the amount of equipment that I need to prepare batteries for and also worry about the batteries running out. So this button works fine for me, but I can see that depending on your use case, you might not actually want to switch between a third camera. If you just want to go between, let's just say, the camera 3 and camera 2, you don't want to have to go through the camera 1 option, and in that case then you have to use the remote control. Okay, so I've connected the third camera to it now. So I have 3 cameras here, so I'm going to rotate between them. So this is camera 3, which is the Lumix GH6, and then I'm going to switch to camera 1, which is the Olympus OM1. So the interesting thing about this one is that I initially set it to 4K at 60 frames per second, and it couldn't actually read that. So the camera displayed a message saying it's not connecting successfully to the device. And then I reduced it to 4K at 30 frames per second, and I set the output HDMI to 1080p, and then it worked. And then the second camera here on number 2 is the Panasonic Lumix GH5 Mark II. Okay, so just to confirm that everything is working as expected, right now I'm on HDMI 1 port, which you can see the output there, and that's coming from the Olympus OM1. And I'm going to press this button here to switch to the next camera, which is camera 2, and that's the GH5 Mark II, and that's the image that's coming from there. And I'm gonna press this button again to go to the third camera, which is the GH6. So this device supports 4K at 60 frames per second, which is the video switcher, and the video capture card only supports 4K up to 30 frames per second or 1080p at 60 frames per second. So for streaming, this works perfectly fine for me, having 3 cameras. And another thing you can do is if you have wireless transmitters, then you can have the wireless transmitters go into this device, which will essentially give you the freedom of not having the cameras being directly connected to this device. So I think this is probably one of the most portable solutions that you can find for live streaming using cameras and using your smartphone as an internet connection, and also have the ability to charge your smartphone using this capture card, which has a USB-C port for charging, and this video switcher, which is tiny in terms of size and weight. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about this video switcher or the video capture card, or if you want me to do any particular testing with it to prove that a certain resolution or frame rate will work or not work, or test it so that you can run it in your own way if you're purchasing these items.